the same thing here.
Yeah, it's a very similar list to what you're just describing. 4 main deck Banisher Priest, 3 Mistcutter Hydra, 2 Skylasher, and then your standard litany of really high quality green and white threats. You have Soldier of the Pantheon, Experiment 1, Voice of Resurgence, Police Main Lion. We've seen all these before. Some Boon Satyrs, Advent of the Worms, Celestia Charm.
You see an Aetherling's going to come down here for Comminos, and Shrout, as we cut into this match, he is up a game. He just has a Soldier of the Pantheon. Looks like he's behind in the game that we were actually cutting to, as Comminos is at 20, which is a lot.
That's a lot.
Okay, he's at 5. Okay, we have our left till update. I was like, 20 is high for an Esper player against green-white. Shrout's the one at 20. Comminos is the one at 5 here. But, you would think that a green-white deck, Esper probably not a very, very good matchup. But the truth is actually a little bit different, where the green-white deck, because of the fact that it has a lot of flash and resilient threats and Voice of Resurgence, actually does pretty well against Esper.
And you have Root Board defenses in the sideboard as well to give you a Boros Charm style answer to Supreme Verdict.
Yeah. So as we update the game state here, you see both players, again, life totals are correct, 20-5 in favor of Shrout. I use in favor loosely here, as one player has an Aetherling and the other does not. Shrout has a monstrosity Fleece Main Lion, so a 4/4 that can't die. And also a Soldier of the Pantheon out there. Comminos has this Aetherling that is attacking. We see some activations here, and he's got some Soldier tokens from an Elspeth that is no longer with us due to Glare of Heresy. And Andrew Shrout currently on the right up a game here. But it looks like we might be working our way towards a third one here.
Looks like we're flashing out the Aetherling.
There's a Godless Shrine that's going to flash back in, and 1 blue available to protect it. As Shrout is without a hand right now. He's just going to draw his. Actually, he's got 1 card down there.
I bet it's a land.
Great guess, Patrick. You are on top of it.
Still got it.
My goodness. Mistcutter Hydra. Okay, so this Hydra is going to be for 8. Now, of course, Hydra does not have trample, and there are 3 annoying Soldier tokens in play.
Yep. So, Bill, as the board is presently constituted, will win this race.
Yes, absolutely.
Andrew needs another draw from here.
Yeah, and that's an easy block because it's a lethal attacker. And Aetherling can actually close the door out pretty quickly. So Comminos is going to draw a card. We'll see if he's going to do what he did last turn, which is make this bad boy unblockable, get in that damage, and then blink it out. 2. So it's going to be an attack for 6. It's going to put Shrout down to 4. We're going to blink out the Aetherling, unblink it, and it comes back in. Comminos is just trying to hold on. Hope Shrout doesn't draw anything of relevance to get this game over with. Shrout says, everybody into the red zone. Block here. Block there, maybe. He does have to be careful because he has to play around a card like Celestia Charm right now. Yep. +2 and trample is huge. And Shrout tried to make an all-out attack, see if Comminos would block appropriately. He did, and that's going to do it for this particular game. So, Bill Comminos does tie it up against Andrew Shrout. Esper Control versus Green-White. Aggro is going to go to a third and final one, which allows us to take a look at these sideboards here. And you've got Shrouts in front of you, so what are we going to do?
So he has an additional Mistcutter Hydra and 2 Skylashers if he wants additional Pro Blue, which has some utility against Esper, or Azorius Charm, defensive Aetherling, what have you. He has 2 Pelucranos, which I don't think he wants here, 2 Last Breath, which he does not, 3 Unflinching Courage, which he does not, 3 copies of Glare of Heresy, which does have some utility against Elspeth, but it's a little slow to the party there. And the 2 copies of Rootborn Defenses, which I'm guessing are already in his deck.
Yeah, I imagine those are already there. Of course, playing against the Supreme Verdict deck. Taking a look at Comminos' sideboard, you've got 2 copies of Negate, an Aetherling, to go along with the first one in his main deck, give him a bit of an edge in the Esper Mirror, but probably not going to need that here. A Thoughtseize, 2 Doomblade, 3 Bloodbaron of Escopa, 2 Gainsay, 2 Sin Collector, and 2 copies of Last Breath. Of course, I like Thoughtseize a lot against a deck like this that has Mistcutter Hydra, has Rootborn Defenses, has some unique effects that are worth knowing about when you want to plan out your game. 2 copies of Doomblade, pretty easy to bring in this particular matchup. Bloodbaron of Escopa, you're playing against a green-white deck. It's going to be good at trading with those green creatures and going to obviously trump the white creatures, so I think you're going to want access to those. Gainsay, of course, not for this particular matchup. Last Breath. Good targets here? I think the answer is yes.
Voice of Resurgence.
You've got Soldier as well.
Experiment 1, potentially. Skylasher.
Yeah, the Soldier token from Celestia Charm. So
you got targets.
Yeah, I think enough targets to want to bring that in. Also, and we've seen some players employ this, the fact that you can use it as a life gain spell, or maybe your Elspeth soldier tokens is something worth considering as well.
Yeah, I see that play a lot more out of blue-white decks because they have Mutavault in their list.
Yeah.
But it does come up in Esper as well in the circumstance you just outlined.
And then last but certainly not least is Sin Collector. Now, if you're familiar with the green-white deck, you know that green-white, depending on the build, most are going to have Celestial Charm, most are going to have access to Advent of the Worm. Some of them are more spell-heavy, will have access to Rootborn Defenses, maybe some other spells after sideboard. Having a 2-1 that can actually do a little bit of trading and get a spell is actually a pretty good card, also giving you the information of what's in your opponent's hand. So would you like to see Comminos bring in these 2 copies of Sin Collector in this game?
It's dangerous. Every time you get a spell, it's awesome, as some of Andrew's best cards in the matchup are spells, most notably Advent of the Worm and Rootborn Defenses.
Okay.
But your miss rate is just so high. A lot of it just depends on if you have enough stuff to do on your 3rd turn, like enough removal spells to play where you don't need to cast something like that. I would probably stay away from it. Can't block Soldier of the Pantheon. It can't really trade it with anything else. There's very few spells in Andrew's deck. I think it's a risky card to bring in. Though I have seen Esper players bring in Sin Collector against relatively spell-like decks because the cards they care about the most are spells, because Supreme Verdict and Jace cover creatures.
Agreed. Soldier of the Pantheon is going to start the show here for Shrout, and that's arguably the best 1-drop that he can play, as Experiment 1 is quite good, but Soldier is very difficult for this deck to answer. A Godless Shrine here for Comminos will get things started for him. He'll, of course, be off with, temples and Ravnica lands, some lands that are oftentimes going to come into play untapped, and then he'll try to catch back up with Verdicts and Jaces and things of that nature. As Shroud is going to play a Temple Garden untapped, he's going to go down to 18, and we'll see what the follow-up play is going to be. It's going to be an Experiment 1.
You played those in the wrong order.
Feels like maybe he just drew that Experiment.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
just
sure
maybe.
Did. Just saying.
Shroud's going to attack for 2. Comminos will go down to 18. And we'll see what he wants to do on his 2nd turn. He does have a Negate in his hand.
Negate is a little curious. Of course, he wants to fight over some of the spells again.
Here's a Thoughts. He's going to show you Advent of the Worm, Rootborn Defenses, a Mistcutter Hydra, and a Forest.
When we were testing for the Block Pro Tour last year, Dispel was pretty good in our Esper list against Green-White because it was not too hard to set up Supreme Verdict with Dispel backup for Rootborn Defenses. And Dispel is pretty efficient against Advent of the Worm as well. A little bit harder to do that with Negate. That extra difference in mana is pretty big here.
So I wonder what you take with Thoughtseize here. I mean, it obviously depends on the contents of Comminos' hand. Rootborn Defenses is a very enviable target to want to take, especially when you know that you have to worry about Mistcutter Hydra and Advent of the Worm, because this allows your Supreme Verdict to actually be turned on. You can see there are 2 copies right now in Comminos' hand.
I mean, that's a very... Bill is being pretty upfront here that I have Supreme Verdict. That's what that means.
Mistcutter Hydra is going to come into play as a 2-2. It's going to evolve Experiment 1, so he's going to be an attack for 2, 4, and 6. It's going to put Comminos down to 10.
And that, even though that Mistcutter Hydra looks pretty anemic, I really like this setup from Shroud. That Thoughtseize represents Supreme Verdict. This puts Bill on Andrew drew a land last turn that allowed him to play Advent on the 4th turn.
Okay.
So that means that if Bill does nothing this turn, trying to set up Supreme Verdict, and then plays Supreme Verdict on the 4th turn, that Andrew kills him because Bill goes from 10 to 5 next turn to exactly 0.
Yeah.
So as silly as that Mistcutter Hydra looks, it's actually a critical massive damage that Andrew has just generated.
Yeah, it serves a very certain purpose. Because now Force is going to come into play for Shrout, so now the jig is up that, hey, I do have access to Advent of the Worm. I'm going to get in the red zone here. Now you've got a real decision to make as far as, what you want to do, because you have to kill something now or Advent Worm is going to kill you, as you mentioned.
I don't know if I would have played that land before combat there, because now Bill knows that you have access to Advent.
Yeah, I think masking information might have been useful with where we are right now. You see Comminos does have a Doomblade in his hand. He also has a copy of Last Breath. Attention Sphere, which he chose not to cast, also has Negate. Now, among those cards in his hand, I think the problem here for Comminos is that I don't think he has the 4th land in his hand for the Verdict in the first place. And you see that he doesn't. His 2 Verdicts, a Sphere, a Last Breath, which he's casting, a Doomblade, a Negate over there. Last Breath is going to attempt to take care of Soldier of the Pantheon.
And Andrew has drawn Selesnya Charm this turn, so he could fight over this Last Breath.
But he's not going to. So an attack here for 4 is going to put Comminos down to 6. And I like the no fight there. I like just letting that go because, again, he's still in the same situation, right, where if Verdict happens, that's fine, as Temple of Silence is off the top, so I don't think we're going to see a Verdict of this turn because that's his 4th land. It's going to come into play tap, the bane of Esper players everywhere. But if Verdict were to happen, 5/5 comes into play, Celestial Charm gives it +2/+2. It's still a lethal turn.
Yeah, Andrew's already kind of selected we're going to see negate here.
There's a Celestial Charm. He says, I'm going to untap, I'm going to draw. Celestial Charm is going to pump up the jam. And that is going to do it. So Andrew Shrout is going to win this match over Bill Comminos 2-1. Green-white aggro, the deck that he used to top 8 the Invitational a couple weeks back in Los